moving on now to another contentious thing that's happened over our break. And we did talk about him a little bit before we finished up in 2021. Romelu Lukaku, we talked about his struggles with Chelsea, and you mentioned him playing out of position and how he could actually be better out wide, coming in, running at defenders rather than back to goal as a traditional number 9. He did what has been described as an explosive interview with Sky Sport Italia. And I just want your thoughts on it. I want to know what you think, how it was handled by Thomas Tuchel and Chelsea and Lukaku's future together. So I'm going to give you a couple of snippets from that interview. Two especially that were pulled into focus. So the first one, he's talking about Tuchel. I think the coach has chosen to play with another system. I just have to not give up and continue to work and be a professional. I'm not happy with the situation, but I'm a worker. And he goes on to say, where does he talk about in? Because then all these memes came out with him about Inter Milan. My favorite was when my favorite meme was when someone's offering a glass of water and he talks about how the water in Italy tastes better and stuff like that, which is just amazing. So he says, now I think it is right to speak because I have always said that I have Inter in my heart. I will return to play there. I really hope so. And so from that interview, obviously shed some light on how he was feeling about the situation in Chelsea, his relationship with Tuchel, and what felt like to me was this maybe a tinge of regret, and I might be wrong, a tinge of regret about the way the move was handled, and the desire to go back to Inter Milan. What were your thoughts when this interview came out?
I think he was more trying to repair his relationship with the Inter fans who felt very jilted after he departed, and also have probably sent him a lot of messages like, oh, Dzeko's better than you ever were, like, screw you kind of stuff. And that's understandable, that emotion after you win a title and then, you know, your coach departs, a couple of your best players leave. Everybody thought Inter was falling off a cliff when Conte left, and I thought, downgraded and replaced him with Simone Inzaghi. When Lukaku left and they got Edin Dzeko, an aging Edin Dzeko on a free transfer, and they've improved. They got better. It's amazing what Inter are doing in Serie A. And Lukaku, his time at Inter was so positive because, you know, he's had such a terrible spell at Manchester United, and, you know, he was getting social media abuse over his fitness, and his first touch was a big thing. And he played in a system that suited his attributes, where he's able to face forward and run at players and play in transition. And I thought Chelsea would be a decent fit, but the reason he left is not because he wanted to leave, but because he saw the writing on the wall. Inter's owners, the Suning Group, are hemorrhaging money based on their situation in China, and they had to sell him. He had to leave. They basically pushed him out the door because there's a big chunk of money, 80 million plus pounds, whatever Chelsea paid for him, is a lot of money for a Serie A team. And Inter their owners had massive debts that they had to clear. So, you know, he didn't really have a choice. And I think he felt hard done by based on the reaction of the supporters who were so angry at him for leaving after such a successful season. So I'd imagine feeling very conflicted about that. Yes, Chelsea is a step up in a league that has more global prominence, and Chelsea are just coming off winning the Champions League. But when you're a star signing and you're getting benched and left out of squads all the time because Tuchel's decided that, you know, Kai Havertz and Timo Werner are better suited to his system than you are, I can imagine feeling pretty jilted about that. So I thought the reaction from Chelsea was a bit overblown. I also thought that the rumours that came out in the wake of the interview, stuff that was apparently said off the record, was a bit was nonsense, and I think clouded people's interpretation of what Lukaku had actually said.
What were some of those things?
So it was like the brother of the reporter who did the interview who tweeted something like, oh yeah, and after the interview, like off the record, Lukaku said he's going to leave Chelsea in the off-season, he's going to come back or whatever. And that just, like, the brother of the interviewer, like, airing off the record comments, like, that seemed like nonsense to me. But clearly Tuchel was not impressed because Lukaku's had to do the whole apology to the supporters, the Comunicado Oficial social media video to make up and everything. So clearly the reaction in the Chelsea dressing room was not positive, which is really interesting to me because I didn't think anything he said was that out of bounds, really.
But do you think that the club had to do that to go on that apology tour to try and save face?
I think what players are seemingly forced to do after every loss to front up and plead for forgiveness and abase themselves in front of the supporters is a very unhealthy culture. People miss penalties. People say things they shouldn't. It doesn't mean you have to get on your knees and beg for forgiveness. Like we talked about this with Manchester United with, Bruno Fernandes posting these open letters to fans after he misses a penalty or something. It's just nonsense. Like, it's a game. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's unhealthy for players' like mental health. It's not a culture that I appreciate. Maybe this is a different case, but I see a trend towards, players having to make these public apologies for very minor things, and I just don't think I don't think it's a good culture.
Yeah, and I want to just touch on something that you mentioned before, is that fans sometimes don't always have the fuller picture, right? And you describing why Lukaku actually left wasn't just a mere, I want to go to Chelsea, but was actually because of things going on behind the scenes. And I think that feeds into this culture as well. Like, when people apologize for stuff, it's like, you don't have the full picture, and like, you don't always have to go out and try and placate sometimes a very small group of people that are just like, that just happen to have a voice.
And you know what I want to add to this, actually, is that Lukaku on Twitter is one of the most open and genuine people, and he engages with supporters, and he does like Q&As and stuff, and it's clearly him running it. It's clearly not some like social media company ghosting all of his tweets. It's clearly him, and he's one of the best dudes. He's so funny and he's so genuine. And I hope.
All right, Lukaku, love it. Jeez, this guy out here is just.
No, he's such a good guy.
Nah, I'm joking.
I hope that this admonishment doesn't make him completely close up and try and stage manage all of his media appearances and Twitter content and stuff, because that back and forth with supporters and so forth on Twitter has been one of the best parts of having Lukaku back in the Premier League. Like, unfortunately, he hasn't delivered on the pitch. I think it's a tactical issue. I think Lukaku is miscast as a sort of target player because he's so big, and he's actually more of a run off the shoulder of the last defender or pick the ball up deep and dribble at defenders. And I think if he was to play a different position in that Chelsea front three, maybe on the right of the three in the 3-4-3 formation, where he could, run at players a bit more, and Havertz can have the burden of having his back to goal, that might suit Lukaku's skill better, because he played really well in a strike partnership when the burden wasn't always on him to be the centre forward.
When he had Martinez.
And his best performance for Belgium was against Brazil in the 2018 World Cup when he was playing on the right wing. So, I think his physical attributes mean he is miscast as this kind of target man centre forward. And I think the same is kind of true of Haaland in a way. These players are so mobile and so skillful at speed that, just because they're big doesn't mean they're a target man.